Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings of peace, blessings be upon all of you. Wonderful to be here. Thank you for spending Saturday afternoon with us. My name is Imam Abdullah Antepli. I am still newly minted president of Rothko Chapel, and I am incredibly grateful to experience my first Óscar Romero Awards with each and every one of you. We do wonderful public programming here. This is a sacred, iconic place. The excitement that I have seen among my board members, my colleagues, Óscar Romero Awards occupy an incredibly special place in our hearts and minds because it all brings everything together for us. What is this Rothko Chapel is about? How do you address brokenness with beauty, with dignity? How do you understand moral courage when the cost is too high? How do you develop courage, work with the evils of the world without becoming one? How do you hold integrity, decency, as you address to repair the deeply seated forms of hate, racism, unwelcome, exclusion? How do you not become one of those monsters that you are running away from? And we have a historical figure, Saint Óscar Romero, who exemplified and modeled this. And we have 5 organizations that we will be celebrating today who answers these questions not by statements, not by slogans, by good work, by exemplifying, by living the answers of these very difficult and deep and challenging questions that we put out there. So my job was to get everybody's attention and invite my dear friend and colleague, my board chair, Troy Porter, to get us going. Please join me in welcoming my chairman of the board, Troy Porter.
Thank you, Abdullah. And good afternoon to everyone. How are y'all doing today? Good, good. On behalf of the Rothko Chapel Board of Directors, it is my privilege to kick off the 2026 Rothko Chapel Óscar Romero Awards ceremony, where we are celebrating human rights advocacy. For 55 years, the chapel has welcomed visitors from all over the world seeking respite and renewal within this transformative sacred space. This space was envisioned by John and Dominique DeMenil and realized by the artist Mark Rothko. Outside on the plaza, you walk past the Barnett Newman broken obelisk sculpture, which is dedicated to the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. This sculpture stands as a steadfast reminder to courageously building equitable communities guided both by spirit and creativity. Today, we gather in honor of another historic figure who bravely brought his faith into action to better the lives of those he served. That person is Archbishop, now Saint, Óscar Romero from El Salvador. Saint Romero is recognized internationally as a martyr because he was an outspoken critic of the military violence, and he courageously defended poor and marginalized communities in his archdiocese. He was murdered in March of 1980 while conducting a mass in a Catholic hospital chapel in El Salvador. Our co-founder, Dominique DeMenil, was deeply inspired by Saint Romero's dedicated embodiment to uniting faith and justice. She established the first award in his honor 40 years ago in 1986. And she stated at the inaugural ceremony, the Óscar Romero Award is given for the chapel's guiding values of truth and freedom, connecting justice and peace. Since then, 24 awards have been given to grassroots individuals and organizations Each of these awardees was honored because of their efforts to work collaboratively in communities to address injustices, and because they displayed a profile of fearless struggle, often with risk to life, reputation, and livelihood. Over the years, awardees have represented many regions of the world, addressing a wide range of human rights issues, including mass incarceration, climate justice, workers' rights, militarism, freedom of the press, government torture and abuse, and indigenous community rights. Today's awards ceremony is a culmination of the Rothko Chapel's 3-year initiative focused on health justice. And with today's honorees exemplifying commitments to building ecosystems of physical, relational, and spiritual well-being in the face of enormous economic and political pressures. We received 38 nominees from all over the world and are incredibly proud of the 5 awardees who are all based in Texas, with impacts of their work reverberating locally, nationally, and internationally through their respective support of LGBTQ+ communities, providing humanitarian medical aid, and honoring the humanity of migrating families. Thank you to the 2026 Health Justice nominators, the Rothko Chapel Program Committee, and our dedicated supporters and donors who continue to make this event possible. It is my pleasure to invite Rothko Chapel board member and senior pastor of Covenant Church, Reverend Laura Mayo, who will provide today's invocation.
I want to invite us to begin our invocation with eyes open. Look around. Consider this sacred space. Look at the paintings, at the light, at the shadows. Look at the floor, look at each other. Let's soak it all in, and as we do, hear these words of Óscar Romero. He wrote, "We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fragment of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we can do is complete. No statement says all that should be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. This is what we are about. We plant seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something, and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that's the difference between being a master builder and a worker. We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future not our own. And now, if you'd like, close your eyes. Look inward as we continue our prayer. Holy One, we thank you for the work and life of Óscar Romero. We thank you for this time to come together to honor courageous leaders who defend human dignity and human rights, often at great personal risk. We invite your spirit of love to come and dwell among us in this time. Come and be with us. Come and be in us as we honor the inspirational justice work of Óscar Romero and as we honor the justice work in our time, offering our appreciation and our celebration for Kevin Anderson and the Truth Project, for FAJR Global, for Pastor Dianne Garcia and the Nuevos Vecinos, for Rubén Garcia and Annunciation House, and for the Transgender Education Network of Texas. Holy One, we cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. May it be that it enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way. This day, we honor those among us who are doing the work of justice and doing it very well. The work is not finished. May our celebrations of their work inspire us to do our own work for peace and justice, to take another step along the way. Amen. I now want to welcome Kelly Johnson, our Chief Engagement Officer.
Thank you, Reverend Laura, for centering us in this sacred space today in honor of Saint Romero and his inspirational wisdom and legacy. My name is Kelly Johnson. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer here at the Rothko Chapel, and this is personally my favorite event in the programmatic life cycle of the chapel, as it's such an honor and joy to recognize the efforts and impacts of these inspiring leaders who activate the unique combined powers of creativity, spirituality, and justice, making up the three-part braid of our mission here at the chapel. In your program, which you should have received coming in, you'll find each awardee's full bio as well as website and Instagram handle. I encourage you to sign up for their newsletters, follow them on social media to stay connected, inspired, and supportive beyond this particular event today. With that, I invite us to fully embrace the uplifting joy of this particular moment here. Amidst the multiplying assaults of uncertainty, violence, manipulation, suspicion, and hatred that infects our daily lives and disrupts our nervous systems, the opportunities to celebrate and reflect on all the good work being done by our neighbors is just as vital to maintaining our individual and collective mental, physical, and spiritual health. I want to remind us that joy is medicine, celebration is healing, and expressing deep gratitude and solidarity with others is delightfully contagious. So I invite you today to lean into the festivities of this gathering and not hold back in sharing your expressions of loving energy to our awardees as they receive their recognition, both here in person and at home on the live stream. While this is normally a space of silent contemplation, today I want you to feel free to clap, hoot and holler, whistle, cheer, chant, sing as loud as you possibly can. So with that, I want to try, let's do a level testing here before we get into the awards. So let's practice by showing our gratitude to all the awardees today with your most energetic expressions of love. Let's hear it now. All right, I like that. Now we're ready to party. So Troy, can you please join me on stage for the first presentation? All right, so it's an honor to introduce today's first awardee, Kevin Anderson, founder and CEO of the T.R.U.T.H Project, telling real, unapologetic truth through healing, established in 2013 right here in Houston, Texas. The T.R.U.T.H Project is rooted in healing justice that centers mental, emotional, and sexual health within queer communities of color through the transformative power of art and storytelling, which looks like multidisciplinary open mics, documentary films, art workshops, dialogue circles, rest festivals, and more. With over 20 years of experience in public health and nonprofit leadership, Kevin brings a heart-forward, creative lens to community work, honoring culture and acts of witness as pathways to wellness. As a filmmaker, Kevin explores silenced or overlooked narratives, including the celebrated 2023 short documentary, And We Rest on Giants, a tender tribute to resilience and love for those living with HIV. And I first met Kevin when we were making plans for the chapel's annual World AIDS Day observance in 2022. And I remember his affirming presence, his creative openness, and dedication to dismantling stigma really stuck with me since then. His purpose-driven work embodies Romero's spirit of persistence through struggle and demonstrates the power of healing in community through creative expression.
So please join us in honoring Kevin Anderson and the T.R.U.T.H Project with the 2026 Rothko Chapel Óscar Romero Award.
You know, I was reflecting on history, and I love that in the pamphlet that you all received for today, you know, for me, it's seeing a picture of Nelson Mandela here. And here I stand. So good afternoon, family. To the sacred space of Rothko Chapel, to the voting committee, to the board of directors, staff, and to all who stewards this legacy with such care, I thank you. I receive this honor with deep humility and with responsibility today. And Óscar Romero, saint, a truth teller whose courage refused silence, whose faith stood firm in the face of injustice, we thank you. I thank you. Your life reminds us that to stand in humanity often requires everything. And still, he stood. That spirit lives in all of us who choose this work. Health justice for me is not abstract, it's embodied. It's the belief that every person deserves access to care, dignity, and the right to exist fully in their body without shame or stigma. It's about meeting people where they are, honoring their lived experience, and building pathways to healing that are rooted in culture and in truth. So through the T.R.U.T.H Project, we center healing through the arts, storytelling, and through our community. We create spaces that affirm life. Spaces where queer and trans folk of color and our allies are invited to be seen, to be held, and to be restored. Our mission is simple yet radical, and that is to transform lives by creating intentional experiences that promote our health, our wellness, and our collective healing. This work shows up in intentional ways through wellness experiences that we curate like Glow Up Yoga and sound baths, through platforms like Heart and Soul Open Mic where creative voices are amplified, and through documented storytelling that brings visibility to lived experience of community and those navigating their own HIV diagnoses. We've gathered hundreds in spaces of reflection, healing, and joy. We've created entry points to care for people who may have never felt invited into it. And in a world that often teaches us to disconnect from ourselves, we as an organization are creating spaces that call people back home. Spaces where someone can exhale for the first time in years. Spaces where silence is broken, where stigma is named, and where healing becomes possible. Spaces where people are reminded not just that they can survive, but they deserve to live fully and to live whole. Because this work is not just about programming, it's about restoration. And it's about reclaiming the part of our lives that, that the world told us that we should abandon. But this work for me, it's really personal. So over a decade ago, I found myself in one of the darkest moments of my life, silently battling suicidal ideations. I remember leaving work one day, carrying a weight that I could no longer hold. And just the day before, I had considered ending my own life. And while I was navigating this darkness, I was alone, I thought, but I really wasn't alone. See, I had my husband who stood beside me, quiet, steady love that reminded me, even when I could not see it for myself, that my life was still worthy, still needed, and still here. And yet, I still needed somewhere to go. Something guided me here to the Rothko Chapel. I sat right in this area here because if you're in this space without all the seats and this platform, they have benches and they have some little pads where if you want to just really ground yourself. And I sat right here. I drove to the chapel. I sat in stillness. I was learning to breathe. I wept. And in that quiet, sacred space, I felt something shift. I felt held. And for over a decade, this space has been a refuge for me, a place that allowed me to simply breathe when life felt unbearable, a place that reminded me that even in darkness, there is still light, a place that has also amplified my joy. And that makes this space even more sacred for me and its history of holding others. There's some history that I want to share with you all. During the early 80s and 90s, during the early days of the HIV epidemic, when stigma and fear caused many faith institutions to turn their backs on folks, when families were rejected and communities were left to grieve alone, this chapel opened their doors. It became a space of remembrance, of dignity, of care, in a time when care was not guaranteed. That is community care. That is health justice. My grandmother used to ask me when I would call her, she was in Oklahoma, I was in California, and she would ask me almost every call that we had, baby, did you plant your seed today? At the time, I didn't fully understand, but now I do. Seed planting requires faith, it requires patience, and sometimes it requires planting in seasons where you may not see the bloom. So through the T.R.U.T.H Project, we have planted seeds in art, through wellness, through storytelling, and spaces where people can return to themselves. Some seeds have broken through the surface, lives transformed, and stories reclaimed. And some are still underground, doing the quiet work of becoming. But today, I stand here as living proof that the seed was never in vain. The seed has taken root, the seed has been nurtured, and now the seed continues to bloom. So to my grandmother, I finally understand. And to everyone in the room, may we continue planting. May we trust the process. May we honor the beauty of what is growing, even when we cannot see it yet. So thank you. Thank you for coming to celebrate with me today in this moment, along with my fellow honorees. We're really appreciative and happy to share space with you today. Thank you again, Rothko Chapel, for the award. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Our next incredible honorees are also based here in Houston, with a network of staffers across the state, the Transgender Education Network of Texas, known as T.E.N.T. T.E.N.T is our state's largest policy organization created for and by trans Texans who work through education, narrative building, and advocacy measures to empower trans Texans and their loved ones. They create safe and inclusive spaces for trans people of all backgrounds, faiths, and perspectives to not only survive, but to thrive. Last fall, they embarked on an ambitious 16-city statewide tour called Texas Belongs to All of Us, to educate and prepare both urban and rural communities to respond to the latest round of discriminatory laws implemented after the 2025 Texas legislative session. The T.E.N.T team engaged 600 people across virtual and in-person workshops, listening sessions, and resource shares addressing community safety and defense, food security, mutual aid networks, healthcare access, and alternative ID support. It's been such a delight getting to know T.E.N.T's leadership team and to be immersed in both their steadfast solidarity paired with their contagious joy and creativity.
Please join us in honoring Transgender Education Network of Texas with the 2026 Rothko Chapel Óscar Romero Award.
Got big shoes to follow with Kevin. Thank you for those words. My name is Emmett Schelling, and I'm the Executive Director for the Transgender Education Network of Texas, or T.E.N.T. I am so honored to be here alongside the incredible staff of Rothko, as well as the change makers and world builders in this room today. We also honor the legacy of Óscar Romero and all of the incredible award recipients that came before us. They paved the path that brought all of us here today, and so I would be remiss to not think of them and name them in this space. Thank you to our beloveds who came today to celebrate all of the awardees and share in a day of joy. And thank you to Rothko staff and board for this incredibly humbling recognition. I feel a lot more thrown than I usually am in public speaking. You would think I have the hang of it by now. When T.E.N.T started nearly 30 years ago, it was a rambunctious group of trans women in Central Texas. Nearly 3 decades later, we have a small but mighty staff of 15, and have expanded our network to consist of over 300 trans, LGBTQ, and allied organizations in Texas. When I got to T.E.N.T 10 years ago, I was completely different, and my life was completely different. T.E.N.T fell into my lap, not by accident, but by happenstance of fate. I ended up here in Texas, as many people do, as a result of a failed relationship. With that said, I was in a state where I did not know anyone. I literally had no friends. And I was outed by my then fiance's aunt, which resulted in myself and my minor child being kicked out on the street and homeless for an extended amount of time. Being in that situation, the feeling of isolation, of not knowing anyone, and feeling ultimately like such a failure to the most important duty in my life, which was raising my child. I reached out to organization after organization, and the first organization to reach back happened to be T.E.N.T. In that time, T.E.N.T was such a critical resource to my survival in the world, and it was a world where I had convinced myself I had been completely pushed aside. I had resolved at that moment that I wanted to change that. I wanted to do everything within my power to not have another person feel the way I felt and feel so alone. Today, I'm proud to say T.E.N.T is where we strive to be a resource for all trans Texans. When my journey began at T.E.N.T, we were up against the first anti-trans bathroom bill. Since then, the state of Texas and our federal government have continued to amp up attacks against trans Texans. They have stripped our youth of life-saving access to medical care and continue to attempt to strip away our ability to just be able to have basic human function in this world. They have created chaos and fear within our community when we know that communities thrive upon trust, compassion, and steadfastness. We know they have plans to expand the ban and push trans Texans further out of our homes and ultimately erase us from the public sphere. What they don't know is that trans people have survived this long because of our tenacity, fearlessness, and love, and honestly, just downright stubbornness. I believe deeply that everyone is more prone to goodness. The common thread of humanity that binds us together is that goodness, is that recognition of each other's innate fragility, imperfection, and heart. Trans people are no different. We simply want the ability to be able to stand in this world with honesty and openness, to not be afraid, to just simply be, to simply be allowed to be recognized as who we know we are. I don't believe that is necessarily too much, but I guess other forces may disagree right now. And in that being, we know that healthcare is as good as its ability to address the needs of the individual. All of us are unique in so many beautiful ways, and that reflects within our physical needs of what we need for our health, to be able to be in this world as best as we can be, to support each other, to love our families, and to pour back into our communities. Trans people are no different. We will remain rooted in our original drive to action, to drive forward the progress that healthcare belongs to everyone, and that everyone deserves the healthcare their body needs, that everyone deserves dignity, that everyone deserves to be safe in the state that we call home and love so dearly. Thank you so much, and we look forward to celebrating with you here afterwards.
Thank you, Emmett and T.E.N.T. Our next awardee was founded in 2022 by renowned surgeon Dr. Khalid Saleh and Houston-based entrepreneur Dr. Mossab Nasser. Their organization, FAJR Global, has grown into an incredible infrastructure to provide humanitarian medical aid for those in need across the globe. FAJR Global is powered by hundreds of internationally renowned volunteer surgeons, physicians, and healthcare professionals to provide life-saving orthopedic and multi-specialty surgical care to regions in crisis with limited medical infrastructure, including Palestine, Lebanon, Pakistan, and beyond. FAJR's guiding belief is that healthcare is a fundamental human right. In 2023, they made history by conducting the largest orthopedic mission ever in Palestine, performing 153 complex surgeries in just 5 days across hospitals in Gaza. It's incredible. Most recently, the team is evacuating critically injured children from Gaza to receive urgent treatments here in Houston, as well as across the US, Egypt, Jordan, and Europe. FAJR has evacuated over 90 children to date, receiving a variety of life-saving treatments. With a mission to educate future healers, they embody Romero's legacy of serving with purpose and standing with the vulnerable and preserving hope for a brighter tomorrow. And I'll invite our board member Lee to share the magic words.
So please join us in honoring FAJR Global with the 2026 Rothko Chapel Óscar Romero Award. Yeah.
Can everybody hear me? I'm usually accused of being a low talker, so if you don't hear me, just give me the signal. Higher. Aha. See? How about that? Okay, there we go. Thank you. My name is Hussein Elkousy. You'll notice on your program brochure I am neither Khalid Saleh nor Mossab Nasser. So I've had various roles with FAJR Global, including physician volunteer, director of sports medicine, and now as a member of the board of directors. I'm also an orthopedic surgeon here in Houston, Texas, specializing in shoulder and knee surgery. On behalf of FAJR Global and its founders, Mossab Nasser and Khalid Saleh, we are humbled and honored that our work has been recognized by the Rothko Chapel and have been included as one of the awardees for the Óscar Romero Award for Health Justice. We live in a world that seems to have overwhelmingly shifted to the pursuit of wealth and power, with leaders who embrace violence, greed, hatred, exclusion, and racism. It is refreshing to be among a group of people and organizations today who still embrace kindness, empathy, love, and mutual respect for each other. The concept of FAJR Global was hatched in 2022 as FAJR Scientific by two men of Palestinian origin who shared the same vision of establishing a non-political and non-religious organization dedicated to providing medical education and medical services to underserved populations. Khaled Saleh is a Canadian orthopedic surgeon who specializes in hip and knee replacement surgery, who practices in Detroit, Michigan. He teamed up with Musab Nasser, a geophysicist here in Houston who grew up in the Gaza Strip. These two strange bedfellows combined their personal strengths and experiences to start their collective mission by providing orthopedic services and education to the people of Palestine. FAJR Global's mission statement: to educate future healers, respond to disasters with speed and dignity, deliver critical medical care across borders, and empower the next generation to rise as leaders of change. They started with two successful missions. Their first one was in the West Bank in January 2023, and the second one was in Gaza in August 2023. Then everything changed on October 7th, 2023. FAJR Scientific had to pivot and adapt. The mission goals expanded as follows. 1, specialties and services expanded. Orthopedics became one of the many subspecialties. We now cover virtually all mental health services, surgical services, and medical services. 2, geographically, Palestine was no longer the primary focus due to geopolitical restrictions. FAJR continued missions to Palestine when we could, but has established projects in Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Pakistan, and other places. FAJR is also looking to extend beyond the Middle East into Africa and South America. 3, perhaps the most difficult change was the transformation from providing medical education and services to improve lives of people in areas with some infrastructure, which was our foundation, to providing humanitarian aid and services essential for life and survival. We no longer were only providing medical and health services, but we now provide the essentials of life, of food, shelter, and clothing. This change is reflected in our website, where FAJR Global has 3 divisions now. 1 is FAJR Medical, which provides medical care, training, and essential supplies. 2 is FAJR Scientific, in which we use to mentor local medical staff and conduct clinical research. And 3 is FAJR Humanity, which provides emergency aid and services for the essentials of life. I refer you to our website to review some of our current projects, which include the following. 1, evacuating critically injured children to Jordan, Egypt, the US, and the UK, including here in Houston, for specialized care. 2, partnering with local stakeholders at one of the few functioning hospitals in Gaza. 3, partnering with local stakeholders to establish field schools in Gaza. The children there have not had an education for 2 years now, over 2 years. 4, providing grocery vouchers to people in Gaza to purchase essentials of life. And 5, planning medical missions to Gambia, Syria, Lebanon, and Sudan. Please visit our website, FAJR.org, to learn more about our organization. There's too much to explain at this in a short talk. We're a 501c3 organization. We welcome any support in the form of volunteering, your time, expertise, or financial support. Again, thank you very much for this honor today on behalf of Musab and Khaled.
Our next awardee comes from San Antonio, and I'm pleased to introduce Pastor Dianne Garcia, founder of Iglesia Cristiana Roca de Refugio and its partner ministry, Nuevos, Vecinos, providing support for immigrant families since 2023. 3 years ago, Pastor Dianne and a group of women created a special faith community offering refuge and support for families navigating migration and the challenges of starting new lives. Nuevos Vecinos provides transitional housing, microloans and grants, emergency assistance, and a workers' cooperative, assisting over 269 individuals from 15 countries to date. And that's just in 3 short years. The Nuevos Vecinos community has been deeply impacted by immigration and customs enforcement assaults, and Pastor Dianne has only stepped up in her leadership, including just last month guiding hundreds of members from the National Coalition to End Family and Child Detention in a 90-mile prayer walk starting from the infamous South Texas detention facility in Dilley, Texas, where hundreds of families and children are currently being detained, to the municipal courthouse in San Antonio. We remain incredibly inspired by her dedication to illuminating our shared humanity and putting faith into action. Laura?
So please join us in honoring Pastor Dianne Garcia and Nuevos Vecinos with the 2026 Rothko Chapel Óscar Romero Award.
Thank you all so much. I'm truly humbled and honored. I did not expect to be this emotional. I'm so grateful to you all for being here. Thank you to all of you who steward this award and steward this sacred space. I'm also mindful that no one can do justice work alone. I stand here with a cloud of witnesses beside me, elders and ancestors who have showed us all how to be voices of love in a world bound by systems of hate, racism, and violence. I stand here with volunteers from my organization who work daily miracles, driving families to medical appointments, making sure there's always enough food and diapers and medicine on their tables. And I stand with members of my community who teach me daily about humility and hospitality and abundant generosity. And also with the supporters near and far who make everything we do possible. Also beside me here, and also literally in the room, is my family, my 2 amazing kids who keep me grounded, and my partner who supports me so well, even though he works for justice in his own right. And my mom online, who still spends a couple of hours each week checking my Spanish. It's true, for years. And even as I name my family, I am aware of the privilege in that. I don't have to wonder if my partner will be disappeared by ICE on his way home from work. I don't have to worry about being sent to prison with my children so that someone could make an arrest quota. I don't have to worry that my boss or landlord or child's teacher will threaten to call ICE if they feel inconvenienced by me. But that is the daily reality for the people in my community. I can't begin to tell you all of the stories, the weight of the trauma, the harm being done to children, the quiet and relentless stripping away of safety, stability, and dignity from immigrant families. But I thought I'd tell you one story. In November of last year, Maria, who is from Venezuela, went to the ICE office to check in along with her child, who had just turned 3. After 4 hours of waiting with a squirming toddler, she was taken inside and told that she was being detained. When she asked why, because she had her work permit and driver's license and social security card, she was told they just wanted to accelerate her case because her court date was too far in the future. Her detention was a shock to my community. Even then, we still believed that if you followed the rules, you would be safe, that children would be safe. When I went to visit her 2 days later in detention, she was overwhelmed and grieving. And her child greeted me and then immediately fell asleep in her arms, and she said he'd been sleeping all the time since they had arrived. We talked, and then since I am also a pastor in my other role, she asked if we could pray. So I started to pray, my own voice shaky with the pain of powerlessness and struggling hope. I started to say, God, please bless Maria and her son. Please protect them. Please open the doors of this prison for them. And then as I was speaking, she interrupted me. Now listen, you do not interrupt the pastor. Like, no one has ever before started to speak over me, even with my sometimes very imperfect words. You sit quietly or you pray along, but not over the pastor. But she did. She just took charge and she said, God, please bless and protect and free everyone in this detention center. Everyone here is worthy of your mercy. Everyone here is beloved by you. And in that moment, Maria spoke aloud the most fundamental orientation for us, to work for true and lasting justice. I am only fully realized in my humanity if I recognize the full humanity of the person who sits next to me on the bus and is my next door neighbor, and also the person who lives on the other side of the city or the other side of the world, who looks nothing like me and talks nothing like me, and whom I have never met. The most powerful act of resistance that we can engage in right now is to care about people we don't know as though they are our own brothers and sisters. To care about the children in detention and those who have been separated from their parents as though they were our own children. But even more deeply, to care about them so much that we allow their story to change our story. Even in one of the most difficult and dark moments of her life, Maria sought to stay connected to that shared humanity. She knew that her strength was in love and her hope in the work of mutual liberation. And so what we are called to is not only to set others free, but to allow ourselves to be transformed in the process, to let our hearts be broken open, to let our lives be rearranged, to let go of the chains that we have been told to carry and the ones we have picked up willingly that constrain our ability to learn from one another, to lift up and to be lifted up, to have our spirits stirred by one another. And as we continue to walk through this dark night, may we journey together with all those who are persecuted and othered and dehumanized, not as saviors or guides, but as co-laborers in the creation of a new reality where we are no longer divided into chosen and forgotten, giver and receiver, but are restored to one another in dignity, belonging, worth, and humanity. We must keep moving together towards justice, and not just in these moments of crisis, but in the long and faithful work of building something new together. Because our freedom, mine and yours and Maria's, and the person that you've never met, is waiting for us there. Thank you all so much.
Today's final awardee works in El Paso, Texas, and we're honored to lift up the incredible work of Rubén Garcia, Executive Director and co-founder of Annunciation House, serving migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers in the U.S.-Mexico border region. Grounded in the Catholic spirit of hospitality and solidarity, Annunciation House has assisted over 500,000 migrants and refugees from around the world since 1978. Through hospitality houses providing food, shelter, a hot shower, clean clothes, and compassionate care as families seek safety and plan the next steps of their journeys. Under Rubén's leadership, Annunciation House has become a nationally recognized humanitarian organization, engaging thousands of volunteers to host an average of 20 to 40 guests each night. Annunciation House garnered the special attention of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton in 2024, who accused the organization of engaging in human trafficking, amongst other unsavory things. Paxton's lawsuit against Annunciation House is still pending in the state court system, with a trial date scheduled for March 2027, and I want us to keep that in mind to continue to support Rubén and Annunciation House into the next year and beyond. Despite legal setbacks, intimidation tactics, and border closures, Annunciation House and Rubén Garcia continue this crucial ministry to provide dignity and care to all of our neighbors. And Maire, I'd like to invite you.
Thank you, Kelly. Please join us in honoring Rubén Garcia and the Annunciation House with the 2026 Rothko Chapel Óscar Romero Award.
It feels, can I be heard? Yes. Okay. It feels like a little bit more of a burden to be the final person to stand before you. You know, I understand that there'll be some refreshments afterwards, and people are probably eager to go and be festive. I want to thank you for this distinguished invitation recognition. Thank you to the board of directors, the staff of the Rothko Chapel for truly gathering us, recognizing the work of so many very special individuals and organizations. I was moved to be selected as a recipient of the Rothko Chapel's Romero Award because the story of Annunciation House is interwoven with the thousands of refugees from El Salvador who have graced our houses throughout the past almost 50 years. I am moved by the recognition that bears the name of an assassinated archbishop from an incredibly small country of 6.5 million citizens. I am moved because Óscar Romero was a conservative intellectual who really never wanted to be archbishop. And when he finally accepted the call to assume the position and the responsibility of being archbishop, thanks to one of his priests, Rutilio Grande, who ended up being assassinated as well, Óscar Romero began the journey of getting to know the people of his archdiocese who had been structurally, to a certain extent, separated from the hierarchy of the church, oftentimes because they were labeled as communist. And that word, that labeling, created a distance, a vehicle through which you could keep what was ultimately the poorest of the poor from being able to fully participate in the faith community that was the archdiocese at that time. It was, however, the poor, in the process of traveling his archdiocese, in the process of going into the poorest of the poor villages and communities, that Óscar Romero ended up being transformed. He was transformed by the poor that lived really a stone's throw away from where he himself lived. The genius of Óscar Romero is that he was an intellectual prowess. He was a giant theological intellect that as he was converted by the poorest of the poor, he brought that intellect to bear in the defense of the poor, the rights of the poor who shared the image of the God who had created them. It was this defense that became so powerful that it eventually cost him his life. This afternoon, Rothko honors 5 recipients whose stories speak of a process of conversion also by the poor, the vulnerable, those that are excluded, and as you have heard this afternoon by each of my predecessors, each spoke of how they themselves were changed. We were made someone new as a result of the encounter with the vulnerable and the poor of the work that we have done. It is these poor who have sculptured us into fierce advocates for those we serve, not on high, lofty platforms, but in the grassroots of the people who struggle and live, the people with whom we work with. We are, so to speak, tiny ants that weave a mighty tapestry capable of holding, nurturing, and accompanying the vulnerable in our midst, and that the world seldom ever sees. Our tapestries are one of the tapestries of the unseen that, like Romero's poor, convert all who encounter them. When the very first refugees began to arrive at the doors of Annunciation House almost 50 years ago, they brought with them their stories of violence, fear, and excruciating poverty. When we would ask them, why did you leave? Why did you risk this journey? They would give us 2 reasons: fear and poverty. Almost 50 years later, and literally, not 500,000, but literally several million of refugees who have arrived at the El Paso border during that 50-year period, and who have passed through a network of hospitality houses inspired and at times coordinated by Annunciation House. If you ask those same refugees, even today in 2026, why did you leave? Why did you risk the Darien Gap? And the answer remains the same: fear and poverty. At this moment, the response of the present government has been mass detention and mass deportation. And in bringing about this response, the government has relied on the same tactics that the government in Romero's time relied upon: the lie. The lie of communism in Romero's time has become today's lie of criminality and terrorism. All of these refugees are dangerous criminals. All of these refugees are potential terrorists, and with that lie, and in the name of that lie, we've undertaken this process of mass deportation and mass detention. The refugees who pass through our houses of hospitality have provided a resounding voice saying to our nation that mass deportation and mass detention facilities are an evil that must be eliminated, and that we have come to understand that there is no government entity there is no corporation, no business that can operate mass detention facilities. And I speak as one who in the El Paso area, we have 3 large detention facilities that right now have between 7,000 and 8,000 detention beds, and in a city where there is already been spent $122 million to acquire another huge warehouse with the corresponding acreage around it to open up another mass detention facility with a capacity of between 8,000 and 9,000 additional detention beds. The massive detention facilities that concentrate thousands of human beings are in fact forms of concentration camps that zap the humanity of the officers and guards obligated to participate in treating refugees as less than human beings. I cannot get out of my mind during that period when, under the first Trump administration, they implemented an operation called Operation Zero Tolerance that was piloted in El Paso. And through this operation, they would encourage refugee families to not present at the ports of entry, but instead to cross illegally the Rio Grande there in El Paso. And instead of processing these people as administratively entries without inspection, they would process them criminally. And because they were being criminally processed, it meant that you didn't go to an ICE detention facility. Instead, you went to the county jail where you were held until you could get on the docket of one of the federal magistrates, where you would then be charged criminally as having entered without inspection. Because you went to a jail, your children could not accompany you. The children were separated from the parent, and they were fed into the Office of Refugee Service Children's Detention Facility Network, and so parents and children were separated. This eventually came to an end when a judge in San Diego ruled Operation Zero Tolerance to be illegal, ordered immigration to cease the project, and to reunite all of these children back with their families. Annunciation House, in fact, received one of the larger numbers of these reunited families who stayed with us while arrangements were made to help them move on to other parts of the United States where they had family and friends. One afternoon, when 6 of these families who had been reunited were brought to one of our houses of hospitality, and they arrived, and after we got them settled and dinner time came and they had dinner, after dinner they went to one of the living areas where there are some couches, and the 6 of them started speaking among themselves, and they eventually got to talk about the moment that their children were taken away from them. And they talked about having been detained. They were in a large room, and there in that large room, one man said, they came up to me and my 14-year-old son, and they said to me that my 14-year-old son had to go to another room. We immediately knew what was about to happen, even though the officer didn't tell us. My son began to cry, saying to me, Papá, yo no me quiero ir. I don't want to go. No me digas que me vaya. No me obligues a irme. There was nothing I could do. And so I told my son, váyase, mijo, go. Todo va a estar bien. Everything will work out. Go. And so my son went to another room, and then they asked me to go and stand by the wall where other parents had already been separated from their children, and there, standing there, I was watching as other children were separated from their families. And then he said, I saw moments where children as young as 5 and 6 years of age would grab the leg of their mother screaming, "Don't let them take me." And I saw officers come, grab the child from their clothing and yank him away, yank her away, and then slide them across the floor to another officer. That was the process of separation. As I sat that afternoon listening to the retelling of that moment, there was this incredible rage inside of me that this was being done in my name. It was being done in my name. And so today, in 2026, what is being done in my name is the creation of these massive detention facilities, this raiding of families, this breaking of doors, breaking of car windshields to grab people, all because they're all criminals, because they're all potential terrorists. All of it being done in our name. The Rothko Chapel aligns with no single faith tradition, and in doing so, like Óscar Romero, who gathered the poor in El Salvador, Rothko, in a line with no single faith tradition, gathers all who hold to and believe in a creative being and force, thus becoming, in that process, a powerful voice for the voiceless. This afternoon, the Rothko community, in honoring us who live and work on the grassroots, have done well in upholding the person and the legacy that is Archbishop Óscar Romero. And I thank you all very much.
So I'd like to invite some team members up. We're going to do a quick stage change to hear a bit more. But as we make the change, let's give our 2026 Romero Awardees one more big round of applause. Thank you so much for each of your dedication, your beautiful, soul-filled words. I mean, that was incredible. I was moved to tears. Several others I see were weeping. We'll get some tissues going around here. As we make the transition, I'd like to invite, now we are going to have a conversation with all of the awardees, moderated by Rothko Chapel President Imam Abdullah Antepli. So stay tuned.
May I invite all the awardees to the stage, please? As we do so, let's give them another big round. Again, congratulations for this well-deserved recognition and honor. It is truly, I speak on behalf of the entire Rothko Chapel community, it is a true honor and pleasure. There are no better ways to honor Óscar Romero and the founders of this wonderful sacred institution. I wonder if I could start out for our brief conversation, if Óscar Romero and Dominique de Menil would be in the room, and what questions would have asked each and every one of you, and what kind of direction they would have pointed out that our consciousness should focus on or act upon at this particular moment. Kevin, let me start with you.
So the extension is the question to Oscar. Yeah, and so because it was interesting when we first began. We had a moment, you and I, when we were in this space of honoring the fact that, is this really happening? And should we even be here celebrating ourselves, right? And so my question would really be around care, self-care. What does that even mean? What does that look like? How he orients his day to slow down and settle. Yeah, especially as I think about, as I've become an elder, I like to lean on my elders and ask those questions, because I know it looks different in 2026 as it did before.
Rubén?
I imagine that if Romero were to walk into this room right now, the question that he would have is, what in the world are you all doing in this room? You belong out there. Get out there.
Test. The way I understand it is what question would I pose to him? What compelled him to take the difficult path? I mean, that's the hard question is, why not take the easy road? The easy road is to close your eyes, turn your back, but some people take the difficult path, and he chose that. So what compelled him to do that? And we should all reflect on that amongst ourselves and what compels us to take the difficult path. And if you haven't taken that path, why not?
I think similarly, one of the things I think a lot about is risk tolerance. And that's something I've heard you all speak about, which I'm interested in because I think it's not often spoken out loud, that we have to face risk in choosing to speak out and advocate for people that are on the other side of, what is called correct here, what is acceptable. So I don't know what he would ask me, but I would love to ask him about how he managed that. How did he face that daily? It's something that I've talked to my children about. But I'm going to this rally and there's a chance that something will happen. And that's a really hard conversation to have. And I remember when I did this really long walk, I walked with someone who was saying, I think in this work, we just have to recognize and face death, and that's part of it. And I'm no expert at it, but it's something I think about a lot and would love to hear his words on that because, of course, it's something that he and so many other workers for justice and human rights leaders faced.
I think my question would be, did you think it could get this bad?
I think he knows the answer to that question by now. I wonder if you could be a little bit more personal and model the work that you do, whether it's grounded in faith or ethics or in humanity, being in solidarity with people. Your work reflects a deep moral conviction. How do you translate that inner conviction into sustained, healthy, non-destructive public action without losing your own humanity and dignity, without becoming bitter, without broken yourself? How do you do this kind of work, respond to brokenness with beauty, with moral conviction, without getting broken along the way?
I'll start with sharing that, a lot of my strength and my ability to stay rooted and grounded comes from community. The conversations, the connections, the opportunity to text my dear friend Alanis and just say, how are you? And us have a moment of connection where she can also ask the same. you know, and so that has been part of what has been part of my grounding and the connection with community, and for us to just truly lean in on each other and amplify joy. I've been using that term a lot over the last 2 years, and at some point I began to feel like it was a fabrication, like it was fake, or like how dare we be joy-filled, right? But to be in space together and understand that joy has meaning, and we can exercise it and practice it together.
What comes to mind is that where I see myself right now in my own life is not a journey that was planned out. The decision of being part of starting Annunciation House, you know, 5 of us, 5 young adults came together, and 5 of us moved into the 2nd floor of an old building, and that's how Annunciation House was born. We arbitrarily chose February 3rd of 1978 as the day we would move in, those that wanted to, and 5 of us did. And you know, because we had no idea where this was going to go, we made a commitment that none of us would leave before 3 months. So you can see how sure we were of what we were doing, that the length of a commitment, none of us leave before 3 months. And so there was no sense of where the journey was going to lead or to take us. What is very present to me in my life is that the living with the encountering of those who arrive at the houses has little by little changed me. Not because I wanted to change, not even because I knew I had to change, but because it changes you. You just become somebody different. And that process continues, and it continues to this day. I get asked frequently, what keeps you going? And I always find that question very perplexing, because in being in the relationship with those who come, it's like, you mean there's an alternative to this? This isn't a choice. This is just what you've been pulled into, and that gives me life. I'm very aware of being exhausted. I'm very aware of reaching moments when there's nothing else to give. I remember one night in the early years where we had over 115 refugees in the Annunciation House building, and the number of volunteers was very, very low. We usually would close the house at 10 o'clock at night, and so we closed the house, and I told everybody, a dormir, todos a dormir, go to sleep. We had people sleeping all over the floor at that particular moment, and somebody was banging at the door. And I went and I stepped outside, and there was this man, and what I remember is that he was a tall, large individual, and he starts telling me what his situation is and how he needs help, and can you help me? And I looked at him and I said, there's nothing in me. I have nothing in me. I can't help you. I simply can't help you. At this moment, I can't help you. And I was so aware that at that moment, I was totally empty, and I have been profoundly grateful for that experience, in that it reminds me that to re-energize, to be able to say yes the next day and the day after that, and many more yeses, includes the recognition that there's going to be moments where there's nothing left. And I put that in God's hands. You know, this is up to you. You figure it out. You know, this is your world. You created it, and I sure hope you're keeping tabs on it all, because sometimes it seems like you're not.
Test. So this is a corny answer, but you know, what keeps me grounded is faith. You know, it's, you know, when I leave this life and pass on, I want to be able to stand in front of God and say that I did all that I could do. There's one of our surgeons who says this. He said it on social media many times. You know, if not me, then who? But you can do it within reason. There are certain things I have control over, certain things I don't. And so you do what you can. Sometimes you lose faith in humanity, and these days it's very easy to lose that faith. And I always refer back, and I don't catch me on this quote, but you know, I think it's ayah number 30 of the Quran, of the second surah of the Quran. The angels say to God, you know, why did you create man? He's just going to bring death and destruction to this world. And God responded, I know what you do not know. And so it's just one of those things that kind of keeps you going, that there is a light at the end.
I feel angry all the time. And that anger can be really destructive, I think, for us. It can really destroy ourselves and our relationships and our communities. And yet it's so important. We have to be angry, right? We have to, if we're engaged in the work, we will be angry. And so I think the question for us is, how do we channel that anger in a way that is transformative for our communities in a positive way? For me, when I feel that anger, when I feel the anger controlling me, right, in a way that's not helpful, I usually go on really, really long walks, which my kids know well. But I also think that I often also turn to faith. Being a pastor, it's a discipline, right? To take that anger and nurture the anger, because on the other side of that anger, if I'm not angry enough, I'm apathetic. So how do I nurture that anger and then give it to God so that God can transform it into love, and know that God's anger is restorative rather than destructive, and that God's anger will create newness in this world, whereas mine will not.
I was lucky enough to be raised by a mother who really hammered into me the idea of service above self. And in that, right, it's also, to your point, you know, how do you not just like break down eventually if you're trying to serve everybody? It's more of, you know, the understanding that if I am not showing up well, then I'm not going to be able to truly serve. If that means my family, if that means my staff, if that means my community. So I think it's like one of those just sort of like balancing acts all the time. But it's saying that just consistently rolls in my head.
For the next question, I'm really hoping you will give us a chance to open more windows into your work. We will get a chance to know your ministry, your witnessing, your incredible service a little bit more in detail as much as possible. When we recognize these awardees, we look for people who are in the grassroots. They are in the trenches. They are doing the work, and often their work is not seen. And that's really, as Rubén talked in his speech, and many of you referred to this, your work changes you. These incredibly powerless, underprivileged, poor, devastated people, they teach lessons. It changes you. I wonder if you could share some of those conversion, as Rubén put it. How did this work change you? What aspect of this work built some lessons or open up some windows into your work that you could share with us? And we don't have to go in any particular order. If anybody who feels more sort of ready to go, I would love to see if you could take us through a few examples or stories. You could tell these lessons learned from the field.
Actually, this is a difficult one for me, so I won't do it on stage because I won't be able to finish. So I'll pass on this one. Going to Gaza in August of 2023 was life-changing.
How long you were there?
7 days.
So I'll share that, and thinking about my own evolution within this space with community, it's my change really, I have found strength through the artists that I've worked with, artists that have trusted me, artists that have been vulnerable enough to move forward with whatever I approached them with, in writing, singing, dancing. And it was through their storytelling that I began to find my own, the authenticity of my own story, and to go really deeper, and to allow myself to be more vulnerable, and to allow myself to not just be curator, but to also be artist, to also be community, and to honor that. Our work is rooted within HIV. In 2011, when I first wrote truth down on a Post-it, and then created the acronym Telling Real Unapologetic Truth Through Healing. We were then, and not even an organization, we're a program of an AIDS service organization. And, you know, for many years, that space helped curate opportunities for individuals to know their HIV and STI status, all while I was spearheading that work, and spearheading that work, and for many years helping many others on their journey, you know, never positioning myself to share with them that I was also a person living with HIV. It was the artists and the individuals that were brave and that would disclose and would share where I began to find my own strength. And within finding my own strength, it allowed me to then begin exploring what storytelling meant for me. And how do I begin utilizing my story, my journey, to help others. And yeah, so community. Again, community for me, I am, you know, I'm so deep community. That's what I'm looking at Atlanta. It's like I'm thinking about us, because like she and I talk so often about, you know, the reality is we appreciate being honored. But if all the honoring was to go away, we still have our community, and we're still deeply devoted to being on that path with our community. So.
I can share. I feel like there's so many ways that I've been changed personally through this work. The one that pops into my mind is actually very personal. It's to do with my mom. I talked a little bit about her. She's from Ecuador. She was an immigrant to this country. And she had lived here about 10 years before I was born. And so by the time I was born, she was very acculturated. She wanted me to appear as a normal American girl. She didn't speak to me in Spanish at home. You know, of course, I went to regular schools and all of that. And she didn't really talk about her heritage. And I didn't know that part of myself. And I came to Texas in part and moved to the border wanting to connect with something in me that felt like was here. And through becoming part of this community of immigrants, I mean, it's been so incredible, but that particular piece of it has changed my whole life, because I've connected to this part of me that was always there, but I didn't know that it existed or what it was. And I feel like it's part of what's allowed me to lead this community, but it's also healed my relationship with my mother, which was broken before, and has taught me so much about the power and beauty of relationships, and community is such a big piece of that, and how we can lean in and really connect to one another in so many ways that maybe we don't even know that they're there. But we have those, and we're carrying those around inside of us, these ways to connect to one another and heal together.
Kelly is pointing out that we are out of time. Oh, sure, yeah.
Wow, okay, I'm gonna try to do this without crying. I am somebody who works directly with the children who have been medically evacuated out of Gaza, and I've been doing this for over a year and a half now. It has changed me on like a cellular level, not from just witnessing the genocide, but witnessing firsthand what these children have experienced, from the process of getting them out to getting them here, their healing process, both physically and mentally. Who am I to ever complain about a thing? Who am I to complain about a flat tire or a bad day or work is stressful? Who am I to even complain, you know what, I hurt my leg or hurt my ankle? These children have lost their legs. They have burns on 90% of their bodies. They've lost their mothers, their siblings. They have lost their entire families. A 2-year-old who does not have a mother or a father or a sibling to ever go to again. Who am I to complain about a thing when, after everything they have gone through, their guardians who survived, if there is a guardian who survived, or a child who survived, and they're still saying, thank you, God. They're still experiencing joy. They're still wanting to play. They're still wanting to be children. And I think the biggest thing that has changed me is, who am I to complain about a thing when there are children who have experienced the most unimaginable crimes and horrors and trauma, and they still smile at the end of the day. And I will never be the same, but in the best way possible. I may not get enough sleep. I may cry on average once or twice a day, give myself a couple minutes to cry. But I have been changed in the best way possible. It's brought me closer to my faith as someone who was not a practicing Muslim prior to 2023. It's changed my faith. It's changed me spiritually. You would think it would have broken me down mentally, but I actually feel I'm the strongest mentally I've ever been in my life. And they've changed me as a friend, as a mother, as a daughter, and as a sister. And I am forever grateful to the children of Gaza, to the men and women of Gaza, and for the entire community that has stood beside us and helped us, and for all the doctors and the nurses and just the everyday volunteers. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rose. As we honor your extraordinary contributions, we are also asking what comes next. What responsibility do we all share? Especially those of us who are in a position of power, privilege. So we have a beautiful reception outside. Without losing the joy of the celebration and recognition, but also remembering the tears that you witness, brokenness of the voice that we witness, let's ask this question honestly. What is next? What can we do together, collectively and individually, to lift up the incredible work, and so that until the kind of evils that these organizations are so incredibly fighting against, and we will not rest together. Please join me again celebrating and recognizing these 5 remarkable individuals and their organizations in the loudest way possible.
As
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Team Rothko. Thank you, Kelly, and your team for putting together this wonderful program.
Can I get the, okay, there we go, podium mic is on. As Abdullah said, we now have a reception outside. We're honored to have light bites, agua fresca from Cochinito & Co., and live music by Decamer Young Artists. Please go out, continue the festivities. We're gonna do some photos in here. And I do wanna close with the prophetic words of Saint Romero. Peace is not the product of terror or fear. Peace is not the silence of cemeteries. Peace is not the result of violent repression. Peace is the generous, tranquil contribution of all to the good of all. Peace is dynamism. Peace is generosity. It is right, and it is duty. Thank you all so much. We'll see you outside.
you.